Welcome, everyone, to the Over Under Movies podcast, where we take a prominent figure or franchise in the world of filmmaking and ask the simple question: are they overrated or are they underrated? My name is DeAngelis. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, the Asian sensation himself, Mr. Jason Gong.
Hello, everyone.
We are taping a very special Christmas-themed episode today, Jason. We, of course, are talking about the very famous Christmas movie, Die Hard, released in 1988. Is that when it came out?
Well, I'm not sure because I didn't do any research.
Spoilers for anyone listening to this episode. We have no show notes prepared. This is an episode we're kind of recording a little bit last minute here. This is a little bit of a test. You know, it's an experiment of sorts. We're going to see how it sounds like off the cuff here.
Yeah. I do have show notes, but they're for a different movie. It's kind of just a prop.
Before we get into the meat of the podcast, I will remind everyone that this exists both as an audio and video podcast. So, yes, you can listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also watch us on YouTube. Please watch our YouTube videos. We're getting very bad YouTube analytics right now.
Dylan, don't beg. It's not becoming.
No, listen. If you're listening to this on Spotify right now, I need you to pull up a second tab, open YouTube, mute the audio, and just let it play through. It helps the show tremendously. Anyway, Jason, I had never seen Die Hard before we watched it like 2 nights ago. Mm-hmm. Somehow, this is one of many movies that are just like a complete blind spot to me. Die Hard is one of the most beloved like action movies of all time. It stars Bruce Willis. Alan Rickman is directed by John McTiernan. John McTiernan coming fresh off of doing Predator, I believe, is the movie that he did right before this. Yes. So he's no stranger to like big action movies like this. Very different type of action movie, though. Upon rewatch, I think you said you've seen this before, right?
Mm-hmm. I saw it once before.
I mean, what did you think of it now? This like second time watching it?
It was good. I think that I enjoyed it more, kind of knowing what was coming. This whole movie is basically just a bunch of obstacles for one grizzled hero to overcome. And I didn't really understand that going in the first time. So knowing what it was made it sort of easy to watch and digest. I could almost like use this as a background movie from now on. It's a lot of fun. It's fun watching John McClane be a badass. And I think it stays fun no matter how many times you watch it.
Yeah, there's a few things that I was looking for when watching this movie, because I'm aware of how beloved this movie is. And the one thing I was trying to find while watching this was like, why? Like, what is the thing that makes this movie like exceptional? And it's funny. I do have I am in the role of the overrated person for this podcast, and I kind of came away with like, this is just like it feels like a normal action movie. Mm-hmm. I didn't see anything that's like particularly amazing about it. I don't know if this is just like. Because of the time period that it was released in, you know, the 1980s were very much like you had like your big, muscly, oily action hero that like, it was like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Like these guys that are just like big and overpowering presences. And they were like kind of like superheroes, basically. These were the superhero movies of the 1980s. But Bruce Willis is seen as a real like fallible character here. His character is John McClane. And you see him get beat up like a lot in this movie. He's taken some hits, and from what I was reading, at least, like this is a bit of like a change of pace when it comes to like the action genre. That typically your heroes were like superheroes, where they kind of couldn't be penetrated like that. Yeah, what are you laughing?
No, I wasn't laughing.
Oh, we'll cut that out.
Yeah, right.
Fucking podcasting with a 16-year-old over here.
Listen, I agree with you.
Wait, is that a Gatorade bottle that says Gabagool on it?
Yeah.
For anyone watching this on YouTube, you'll see it because he has it directly in line of the camera.
I know. It's one of my favorite things.
Like it's product placement.
Yeah, for Gabagool. Listen, I think you're right. I think the fallibility of this character is part of what makes this film stand out. It's kind of cool watching him take these hits and then maintaining damage throughout. Like how in Spider-Man 2, the video game, when you get beat up as Spider-Man, you start to see the suit take damage, right? And we're all like, whoa, what a cool feature. Spider-Man looks so cool like this. Well, this is like that, but like times 10. Like John McClane gets shot. He gets his head ran through drywall. He gets shards of glass in his feet and body. Like he is just cut up and bruised, and he has to persevere through it. So I think you feel more of the grit and determination from this action hero because you see how much of a pounding he's taking and how penetrated he is.
Yeah, very, very penetrated and very, very, very deep. Speaking of which, this movie takes place in a very, very phallic skyscraper type building, Nakatomi Plaza, which I believe is like a Fox building in Los Angeles that was under construction at the time. They got permission to basically just like film in the building as it was being built, which is cool because like they didn't really have to like build sets. Like they just kind of like filmed it in the building.
Yeah.
I think he has like a white tank top on at the beginning of the film. By the end of the film, he has no shirt on, but like that tank top is like basically black by the end of it.
Yeah.
Because he's just like crawling around and getting like messed up the entire time. It's a cool idea for like, I guess, a twist on the genre. But looking at it now with all the action films that we've seen since then, and the one movie that like I'm going to make a direct comparison to because it is like the big action franchise nowadays is John Wick. Mm-hmm. And it feels like such a step below, like several steps below like what the John Wick films are, even though the John Wick movies really are, you know, they're the same thing. They're just big, dumb action sequences, but they're like just way more thought out and like way more choreographed. And this feels so like low budget in comparison. I think this movie is like a $30 million budget or something like that. Mm-hmm. Made like, I don't, again, we didn't like write this shit down, so entirely possible. I think it made like 140, something in that range.
Okay, pretty good returns.
Yeah, it made good returns, exactly. And I don't even think like Bruce Willis was like that big of a name yet.
No, he'd mostly done TV work up until this point.
Yeah, Bruce Willis also has hair in this movie, which is a little startling to watch. It's weird seeing people that you know is like bald, seeing them with hair.
Yeah. Name some other people that are bald and.
A lot of the examples I can think of are like wrestlers, like The Rock when he was younger had hair, and like he's a guy that like everybody knows him as like
right.
is bald.
So one thing you did say while we were watching this movie, almost immediately, was you said Bruce Willis's chest is pretty underdeveloped, not that strong.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of upper chest work lately. I mean, like incline bench is really important because a lot of people they develop the lower part of your chest because when you're doing like a bench press or something like that, you got that arch in your back. If you're wondering like what part of your body you're working out, it's whatever body part is like directly opposing like the force that you're pulling or pushing on. So a lot of people they expose that lower chest when they're bench pressing. So you got to do your inclines. That's what I'm saying, Bruce Willis. You got to do your inclines to work that upper chest. Or do like some like shoulder press workouts.
Right.
You know, really helps with penetration. That's what I'm saying.
Arnold and Stallone both turned down this role. So it's interesting because, like you said, Bruce Willis wasn't that known at the time. This was what made him an action hero, and now he's most famous for that. So
yeah, it's funny. Like I think of him in like Pulp Fiction, very similar character. Mm-hmm. I think of him in Fifth Element. He's basically playing the same guy in Fifth Element 10 years later.
He's always like a gruff loner type.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not if you're listening. I've not seen Sixth Sense. I know that he shows off a little bit more range in Sixth Sense.
Okay, yeah, he's not a gruff loner. I mean, he still kind of is a gruff loner type, but now he's a child psychologist.
But yeah, he's an actor that kind of got typecast into this role of like he's a cop. He's an authority figure. He knows how to fight. He knows how to use guns. This is a propaganda movie. Say right off the top, this is a movie that is very pro-police.
Well, I don't know.
Anti-capitalist.
The police are not shown to be particularly helpful in this movie. Only the one cop is friends with John McClane.
Yeah, it's the plot of this movie I think is absolutely a weak point in like the larger sense because like the elevator pitch of this movie, no pun intended for when he's climbing down the elevator shaft. The elevator pitch of this movie is great. Mm-hmm. It's a guy that he is fighting his way through a bunch of goons in this building to get to his wife, who is one of the hostages that are held hostage by Hans Gruber, and these like I guess they're all German terrorists.
Yeah, I think
what I didn't even pick it up. Like, what is the motivation of these guys? Did they say?
Yeah, they just want the money that's in the safe, and they're using ideological terrorism as a cover for that.
So they're using a much more interesting plot point as cover for
essentially
we're just basic robbers.
Right, they're robbers, and they know that they can like prolong negotiations and hostage things if the law enforcement thinks that they're ideological terrorists. It also kind of covers their identities a little bit.
Yeah, so early in the movie, Bruce Willis is trying to contact the local police. He's a New York cop. He's visiting his wife who's working on this building in Los Angeles. So he's not involved with the LAPD. He's trying to contact them, and like they think it's like a crank call or something. They like won't believe him. And I almost wish that like the entire movie was like that, where he keeps trying to contact them and they keep like spurning him, so he has to take matters into his own hands. He like literally has to be an army of one. I feel like it would make the movie a little bit more compelling. As the movie goes on, you kind of like realize that they need more plot than just that like basic guy is fighting his way through a building element. Even though that can absolutely work. I don't know if you've seen The Raid. The Raid is basically just like a group of cops like fighting their way through a building to get the hostages, and it's great. Even though those are movies that rely really heavily on like the action sequences and like the martial arts stuff. The action in this movie is fine. Unlike John Wick, where like I feel like the gun fights are what make the movies like really interesting, because it's just like constantly like swapping through guns and you're just like headshotting everybody. It's like a video game. It's not really like that in this movie. This movie's like pretty grounded.
Yeah, so I think what makes this movie special is that John McClane has to sort of MacGyver his way around a lot of situations. You'll see him like use his belt to hang down from things and use like a fire hose to hang down from things. He like makes a bomb that's going to explode an entire floor of this building by putting some C4 on a wheelie chair and throwing it down an elevator shaft. Like, those are the types of things that make this movie interesting, in my opinion.
I guess we could talk a little bit about Alan Rickman, who is the other like main star of this movie. Alan Rickman in his feature film debut, I believe.
Oh, was it?
So he was obviously had like classical training, but I believe this was his first movie. Interesting like breakout role for him. He's not an actor that like did a lot of like major roles, especially like not in this sense. Like he's playing a relatively like generic henchman character. Though I'm sure if you look up like greatest like movie villains of all time, I'm sure you see Hans Gruber somewhere on that list.
Yeah.
He's an interesting character, but I don't know, as like a foil for John McClane, he works like super effectively. I feel like they could have like fleshed him out just like a little bit more. I think Rickman's performance is the main thing that elevates it, in the same way that it elevates his performance as like Severus Snape. It's just the way he talks. It's such a weird tempo that it's unnerving, and I think that's what makes him like compelling as a villain type character.
Yeah, he's awesome in this movie. I think he is one of the like more memorable movie villains. People still talk about Hans Gruber a lot. It's cool to see him kind of go from this composed, like maniacal villain to just kind of losing his shit and not being able to keep his cool. So you do see some of the range coming from Alan Rickman in this, and he also does an American accent when he's trying to pretend to be a hostage the first time he and John McClane come face to face. So
yeah, see, I feel like that sequence would have been really cool if it like wasn't 5 minutes long. Like if they had like a chunk of the movie where John McClane thinks he's like helping this guy that like lost his way through the building. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna be like my sidekick now. Like, come help me out."
yeah, I kind of agree. That would have been a neat, different sort of spin on that.
Because otherwise he's just like fighting through all these henchmen. There's a guy that he kills really early in the movie, and then like that guy's brother is kind of set up as like the mini boss that he has to defeat before he gets to Hans Gruber. But that guy's like completely forgettable. I don't know any of the henchmen's names, just like random German dudes. Yeah. I just wish there was more like direct conflict between Hans Gruber and John McClane. They feel like two characters that are kind of acting like independent of one another, despite the fact that, you know, the overlapping conflict between them. The main setup of this movie is John McClane is going from New York to visit his wife, who they're not divorced, but they're like estranged basically. She's working at this big company. She has taken back her maiden name on her office door. She has the family photo turned down that has her and John in it. So when Hans Gruber, you know, later in the movie can flip it up and go, "Oh my God, that's the guy's wife." Cool little moment there. It's interesting that the main setup of the movie is that there's this couple that's estranged because he's too focused on like being a New York cop, and he can't abandon being a New York cop to go follow his wife and his children over to Los Angeles, where obviously she has this incredible job opportunity, right? And then the way that he rekindles that marriage is by violently taking out all these terrorists throughout a building.
Kills 12 German terrorists and proves his love for her. But he also, I mean, he has his story arc where he apologizes to her through the walkie-talkie to another cop. He says, "I'm sorry. I should have supported you. You know, you were right to come out here, and I just didn't understand." So he kind of learns like about himself and what he needs to do to be a good husband and father. And that all does happen, yes, while he is taking out some bad guys.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's a criticism that I saw online that the movie's message is him like growing as a person through just violence.
But that's like common in a lot of action movies, right? It's the language of the genre.
Well, listen, I understand it's not that deep, and I understand like action movies in general are not that deep. Again, my whole analysis is like trying to pick apart like what is the thing about this movie, like what makes it like stand out. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, like it just feels like this feels like dozens of other action movies that we could probably watch that we just like pull up on Amazon or like Netflix or something. Like what?
No, I think a lot of story
special about
beats
this?
come full circle in this. So a lot of subplots get tied off nicely. Like everything kind of pays off that they set up. So John McClane learns to support his wife. His wife gets a watch from another guy in the office earlier in the film, and she puts it on, and he's kind of hitting on her and stuff. And then by the end of the movie, she has to remove that watch that Hans Gruber is holding on to as he's dangling off the side of the building. She has to take it off so that Hans Gruber will die. So she's kind of giving something up too to save this marriage.
Yeah, it's like symbolizing like they don't have all the time. It's they need to get that time back.
No, it's just symbolizing that she doesn't want this gift from a guy hitting on her at work anymore.
That guy was like one of the unsung heroes. This movie's got a lot of weird side characters. Again, it's like very basic movie idea, and then they just kind of built some stuff out from it.
Yeah,
I think of it as like if you're writing a book and you're like, I've got the general idea for the book, and I've got like a cool beginning, and I know the end, and then you're like, shit, I got like 12 chapters in the middle I got to write.
Well, I think it's cool that they kind of build out the world and the characters, right? Like there's two FBI agents named Johnson. There's no real reason for that. It's just kind of funny that they're both named Johnson. You see the news reporters play a big role in the story. You see like the local police play a big role, and then the feds come and say, "You're not on this case anymore."
You're missing the best character in the movie,
The limo driver?
which is the limo driver. Specifically the limo driver and the giant stuffed bear.
Yeah.
That plays no great role. Huge missed opportunity for that bear not to come back around.
The bear should have been used in some way to execute a terrorist. I agree.
Because that was like the gift that he was bringing for his wife. So like, I also wish the limo driver did a little bit more as well.
Yeah. I mean, so he does get one
Just one
confirmed kill.
moment, yeah. One confirmed kill.
But we cut back to
He
him
took a life.
like 7 times in this movie, and you just cut to him not knowing what's going on, listening to music in the limo. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that actor I feel like is charismatic enough that it's worth cutting back to him just to check on how he's doing.
Yeah, he feels like a guy that his agent might have just negotiated like X amount of screen time for him. And they're like, listen, we'll give you a few shots here and there, you know?
Yeah, but again, like it's a character that gets introduced, and then he gets a resolution to his storyline. He gets to kill someone and then drive the car out of the garage and take John McClane and his wife home after they've reconciled. Like he's doing his job.
So this movie has a good number of like iconic scenes or iconic like moments or lines. He's got him climbing through the ductwork, very clean ductwork. However, it is a building under construction, so it has an excuse to be clean ductwork, I suppose. There's a Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon, using the line from the
Like the TNT version.
the TV censor. This movie must have gotten like so much viewership off of just TBS and TNT and just random like how many times do you think this movie has been shown just on cable television? It's got to be absurd. It's got to be like in the top 10 movies.
Yeah, thousands of times.
That have been shown on cable television. It is interesting, like looking back on it, and we only saw it like a couple nights ago. You kind of like forget the movie, like right after you see it a little bit.
I don't know about that. I think you might forget particular sequences when compared to like John Wick, but I remember like the characters and the basic beats of the story pretty well. Die Hard's a good movie. I think you just didn't like it.
Yeah, it's interesting because this movie spawned what I think 4 sequels.
Yes.
They had Die Hard 2 came out like 2 years after this movie. They like rushed to get a sequel out for this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
McTiernan did not direct that. He directed the third one, which I think is called Die Hard with a Vengeance. Mm-hmm. And then like the series took a break for a while, and then there was I think Live Free and Die Hard was the next one.
Yep.
Which is the only one I had seen in this franchise. That was with Justin Long, and the villain is Timothy Olyphant. And like the plot of that movie is like there's like hackers and like tech terrorists type thing. And then there's also a later one that came out like a few years later that is awful.
Yeah. What was that? What was that one called?
I think it's called A Good Day to Die Hard.
Terrible.
Yeah, they're going for like a James Bond type thing, I think, with the titling.
Yeah.
It's bad. But it spawned 4 sequels that none of them are well regarded, which is weird to think because if we compare it to like John Wick, like everybody likes the John Wick sequels. You can argue like which ones are better than others, but like overall they're pretty well regarded. Mm-hmm. It's not uncommon for action franchises to have good sequels,
right?
Because if you have a good formula, you just like replicate the formula. McTiernan did Predator. Predator 2 is really fun. It's not like an amazing movie, but it's good. Like if you like Predator 1, you'll like Predator 2. It's curious that like this formula didn't work for those sequels. And I haven't watched all the movies in the series. Do you know anything about the sequels?
I haven't seen a single one.
I think the second one is like a continuation of the first one because I feel like the idea of the entire movie taking place in a building is like the main thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I know people compare like other films to Die Hard, and when they make that comparison, it's usually because the film takes place in one location,
right?
And takes place over the course of one night. Like Live Free or Die Hard, like does not do that. Like it's just an action movie.
Just an action flick.
It's like it's like a Fast and the Furious movie. Like it's just like a bunch of like CGI like action sequences. And who knows, like maybe it's a little contrived, like that guy constantly getting in the same situations might be a little strange, but I think it knocks the movie down a peg a little bit. This franchise didn't really like amount to much. It's just this movie.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of its cultural footprint, I think people remember this as like the only great movie out of these movies, but they did make 4 sequels, and box office wise, I think the first 3 all were successful.
And you're right that this is what turned Bruce Willis into like an action star. I believe he's in the Expendables movies, which is the standard for whether or not you're an action hero in the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
Another element we haven't talked about yet here is like there's a good bit of comedy in this movie too, which they could have done more of. Bruce Willis goes from being like really serious at the beginning of the film, and he's really serious with his wife because, again, they're like fighting. They're like on the verge of divorce. Mm-hmm. And then these terrorists start like attacking, and he immediately starts getting like jokey with them. Mm-hmm. It's a weird face turn that I feel like could have worked if it was like a little bit more consistent, or if that was like the tone that they were going for.
Yeah, I think it just shows that like he's most in his element when he's dealing with criminals, and he's kind of out of his element when he's dealing with his marital problems. So he doesn't know how to like be relaxed and have a good time when talking to his wife at this point in their marriage, but he can do it when he's fighting terrorists to the death.
Because like I was looking at Alan Rickman's filmography, and like the main movies that he's known for outside of this, like it's a lot of comedic roles. So I don't know, maybe like the back and forth between him and Bruce Willis could have been like more like jovial, I guess.
Yeah.
That might have made things a little bit more interesting. I guess we can talk about the elephant in the room, Jason, which is why we're doing this podcast at this time of year.
Sure, ask your question.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
I'll say yeah. I mean, they play Christmas music. It takes place at Christmas time. So pretty much.
You're like, I have no strong opinions. Sure, bro.
I don't. People get pretty heated about whether this is a Christmas movie or not. I think it is just because it's takes
almost
place at Christmas. Was it released around Christmas?
I have no idea.
We really didn't research this. We don't even know when it came out.
I apologize. I just got off of work.
Yeah, and I just saw a different movie, so.
It's arguably the biggest conversation surrounding this movie is this a Christmas movie or not? The entire film takes place on Christmas Eve. They make it a point like very early on, this is Christmas Eve. He's visiting his family for Christmas. The newscasters, they don't want to be distracted by this like terrorist attack on this building because it's Christmas Eve. They want to talk about Christmas Eve stuff. They don't want a distraction, which is kind of interesting. Obviously, there's the visuals of like Christmas trees and shit like that around. I am of two minds of this question. One, I definitely think you can argue that it's a Christmas movie because it takes place during Christmas, and there are plot points that are directly related to Christmas throughout the film. However, this movie in no ways needs to be a Christmas movie. I think it adds nothing to the film given that it's during Christmas time.
I don't know. I think it's fine to just call it a Christmas movie just because it takes place during Christmas Eve and has a couple of Christmas trappings. I think you're right that you could remove all the Christmas stuff and it's basically the same movie. But, you know, it's just a nice little parable about a guy trying to be there in the right way for his family at Christmas. So I appreciate it as a Christmas film. The first time I watched this movie, it was one of my good friends really wanted to drink eggnog and watch his two favorite Christmas movies with me. So he showed me this, and he showed me A Muppet's Christmas Carol back to back. And I enjoyed it, and it was very festive and Christmassy for me. So I think if you watch it and you're in the Christmas spirit, then you will be watching it with the Christmas spirit.
This movie came out in July 1988.
Why did they do that? That's so funny.
I take it all back.
That's as far from Christmas as you can get. Why would they release it then? That's crazy.
A hot take. Die Hard is the ultimate Christmas in July movie.
You know, it's enjoyable year round, but I do think watching it at Christmas, if you're wearing your Christmas sweater and stuff, you know, at that point, any movie can be a Christmas movie, but especially this one.
What is your favorite Christmas movie? What's like your go-to?
You know, I feel like this might be unpopular, but I really like the movie Elf, the Jon Favreau film Elf, starring Will Ferrell.
Yeah. We might be talking about that film in a couple weeks here. We'll see.
Yeah, I think most Christmas movies, like, I don't have that much nostalgia for. What's your favorite?
I mean, do you watch the ones on like ABC? Did you watch those like when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, but those are like barely movie.
Like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, or like Year Without a Santa Claus, or what's the one with Heat Miser and Ice Miser? You've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, no, out of those, I think I've only seen Rudolph. I don't remember what the Heat Miser Cold Mister is from. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I know what you're talking about, those claymation ones. No, I wouldn't say any of those are my favorite Christmas movie. What's your favorite Christmas movie?
I really like Gremlins. We'll have to do Gremlins for an episode because Gremlins 2 it's very similar to like The Matrix Resurrections in that like they brought the director back, but the director had no interest in making a sequel to the movie. Nice. So he just tried to like make a movie to like fuck with the studio executives. It's great. Highly recommend. Double feature. Watch Gremlins and then immediately watch Gremlins 2.
Cool.
All right, so before we get into our overrated, underrated arguments, we gotta first determine how is this movie rated. And this is objective ratings, 1 out of 10 penetrations.
Okay.
Where do we rate this?
You know, it's hard to say without having done any research, and I don't know if it got any Oscars or awards or other accolades. I don't know what critics said of it at the time. But all I know is that a lot of my bros really like this movie now. Part of the conversation still.
Yeah, we didn't talk enough about that. This is a movie for men.
But a lot of my boys really like this film. I was just talking about it at one of my friends' givings. We were talking about action movies, and we were like, yeah, Die Hard, that's a good one. That's the one. So in the public consciousness, I gotta think it's pretty highly rated. Let's put it at like a 7.5.
All right, okay, we'll go 7.5.
Okay,
that's
cool.
Fine. We have been doing a lot of podcasts for men.
Yeah, I know. I keep telling you we gotta.
There's like a Mean Girls reboot coming out, right? We could do the Mean Girls reboot.
That was my idea. I texted you that 2 weeks ago.
I just came up with this idea live on the podcast.
Fuck
you guys, buddy. Heard it here first. Jason, you have the job of arguing that Die Hard is underrated. What's your pitch?
All right. Well, basically, we covered it because this kind of was like the format throughout this episode of kind of arguing. So we kind of already did this, but I think that this movie has a lot of plot lines that come full circle. There's a lot of fun side characters. It sounds like you found them a little distracting, but I found them to be endearing. It's like a prototypical action movie. It created a lot of the tropes that we're familiar with today. I think it created the guy crawling around an air vent trope. I think it created the I'm in charge of this situation, not anymore, you're not trope. Things we see a lot and take for granted in action films. This movie kind of started it. And in a lot of ways, it's still like one of the tightest and best ones. Like, I know the movie's, 2 hours 12 or something?
You're jumping on my argument here, Jason. Yes,
Yeah.
2 hours and 12 minutes.
But I don't think there's too much fat to trim. I think sometimes maybe cutting between like what's going on outside with the police trying to handle the hostage situation and cutting back to John McClane when he's just licking his wounds in an empty office building. Maybe that you could trim a little bit of. But like for the most part, you're watching a movie that is like everything's happening for a reason. He's going from point A to point B to point C and coming up with really creative solutions to overcome the obstacles he's facing. It's just a really cool, fun time. I think it's a really tight story. And then, yeah, I think a lot of people haven't seen it. You hadn't seen it until this year. I hadn't seen it till about 2018. I think I took for granted that it was like this dumb, TNT action movie. And then when I watched it, I was like, okay, I get it now. It sounds like you didn't get it, so I'll let you go into your argument.
When you look at lists of the greatest action movies of all time, you see a lot of like really incredible action movies on that list. You also see Die Hard, and you're right that when you see a movie when you're older and you've already heard everything about how good that movie is, it sets sometimes unrealistic expectations going into it. I don't think I necessarily had unrealistic expectations. Again, I really like Predator, and like I know what Predator is. Mm-hmm. It's just like a stupid little like monster movie, and it's not like genre defining by any means, but I think it's enjoyable for what it's trying to be. And in this film, I just really struggled to find anything like truly exceptional about it. I think Bruce Willis is like a good actor for this type of movie. I think Alan Rickman is an interesting villain character. However, like the rest of the movie, like writ large, like just didn't connect with me very well. Mm-hmm. I think all of the other side plots could have been they could have been compressed into like one. I feel like here's my pitch. Take all of like the extra police crap that's like happening outside and just have it so that the first time that he tries to reach out to the LAPD on the walkie-talkie, he only can communicate with the one, the Twinkie cop. I forget his name. Mm-hmm. It's just that guy somehow that he's able to communicate with. And then that cop basically like that's his entire communication with the outside world. And so he's talking to that one cop, and that other cop is kind of like he's going from the ground level up to him. That's like his like sidekick that he's working with. So at least like
interesting,
because the movie does suffer, from like John McClane has nobody to talk to because he's just like by himself, and you need your action hero to like actually talk. For the most part, this isn't Sisu, okay?
Right.
Shout out to our guy Sisu, silent protagonist, amazing action film. Go watch Sisu. There's no reason this movie couldn't have been an hour and 40 minutes long. This movie would have been significantly better at an hour and 40 minutes. You could have trimmed that fat out. Maybe give his wife like something to do on her end so that she's not just the damsel in distress, basically. She's just like the thing that's held over his head. That's why he isn't going completely guns a-blazing through this place. Yeah, this movie's really highly rated. Rotten Tomatoes, it has like a 94%. I'm also bearing the lead here. This movie is nominated for 4 Oscars.
Really? That's crazy.
This movie is nominated for Best Visual Effects, Best Sound Mixing, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound Editing.
Incredible.
The number of movies that are just way better than this that have not been nominated for 4 Oscars. It's great. I understand these are all like technical nominations.
Yeah.
But even still, like, did you watch this movie being like, wow, this needs like a Best Editing nomination?
I don't think I've ever watched a movie and said it needs a Best Editing nomination. I don't know what goes into judging that category.
Except for Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer needs one.
Oppenheimer probably does deserve one, yeah. Oh, that movie's so good.
Best visual effects, there's like some green screen work of like when Hans Gruber falls off the building.
Hans falling, but maybe that looked really good for its time. I don't know. What did this come out? 88?
88.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably pretty standard green screen falls for 88.
Yeah, there's just nothing spectacular about this film.
I don't know. They blow up a helicopter. Side. That's always
They do blow up a helicopter. That's a good time. I think they blow up both helicopters, don't they?
Yeah, and they blow up the like battering ram car or the whatever it was. That they were trying to use to break through the doors.
This movie is also is a propaganda film, which knocks it down a peg. ACAB, for anybody that doesn't know ACAB, it stands for Assigned Cop at Birth. We all know that cops are born policemen. They don't have any choice in the matter. You know, I watch a lot of like movie YouTubers and like listen to a lot of movie podcasts. They all speak highly of Die Hard.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Something just did not click with this movie for me, and
Yeah.
because of that, I have to give it the overrated. And also, this movie does not deserve to be nominated for 4 Oscars. There's nothing fucking amazing about this.
I don't know. You were scrolling on Twitter a lot during this movie.
That's true. The movie just it struggled to like hold me.
That's okay. I did that during Halloween.
I mean, interestingly enough, like I know like you're someone that's not like a big fan of like slower paced stuff. I mean, did you think this was like fast paced enough to like keep your attention like that?
I think so. I think it also like keeps cutting around to different characters in that sort of like, modern ADHD style. So even if the main plot was going slow, they would cut back to the limo driver, and I'd be like, yeah, there he is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that if you were to trim this movie down and like take out a lot of those like secondary and tertiary like plot elements, you would need to kind of like reconfigure the script a little bit to make it like interesting, because you just can't have like the whole movie be Bruce Willis like making his way through the building. It wouldn't. There's no way that would be interesting. But overall, yeah, I definitely land on the overrated side of it, and we can get into like our final verdict here too. Like, I absolutely think it's overrated, and it's not just because I didn't like the movie specifically, because this is not a did we like the movie or not podcast. Just I don't see much to like elevate this above like, if we were to watch like 5 action movies from the 80s in a row, would this one stand out as being like, whoa, like they really did something with that Die Hard one.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I do disagree. I think this is like a pretty phenomenal movie, and that the plot is pretty tight. But I don't know. I think I'll go and say that this film is properly rated. I think it is revered by fans of action movies because of everything it started, and it's just a well acted, cool, creative piece, and it's just something that's fun to talk about with like other fans of the genre, and I think that's kind of all it needs to be. So I'm gonna say it's properly rated as is, and that it is a Christmas movie.
We should probably also like end the podcast like saying like best wishes to Bruce Willis, who is like kind of like deteriorating like semi publicly. He's someone who in recent years has done a lot of like red box films and like low budget action movies, basically films where he's not really doing much. He's just collecting a paycheck. And he was clearly anticipating like this like mental decline that he's got like early onset dementia or something like that. He's becoming like increasingly like nonverbal, and he's not that old of a guy, so it's very, very unfortunate. Same with Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman died in his 60s, cancer. So it's shout out to those actors. I think they both put in really good performances in this movie. It's always tough when you see actors that have like, he could have had like a second surge of his career.
Sure.
I mean, we see guys like, like Keanu Reeves, who is like in his like same age bracket, like popping off with the John Wick films now, or we saw like Liam Neeson had like a second surge of his career as like an action hero. I think it would be entirely possible that Bruce Willis could be making like another Die Hard trilogy in the 2020s if he was capable. Unfortunately, we'll never see that. But just shout outs to Bruce Willis. Can't write the history of movies, certainly action movies, without talking about Bruce Willis.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also agree that if I had to land on one side of it, I would land on that this is a Christmas movie. But anyway, that is our discussion on Die Hard. I'd actually low-key recommend watching this movie, despite the fact that I didn't personally like it that much. I think it's worth a watch, especially if you're somebody that likes movies, you got to watch movies that people say are good to get like your own opinion. I mean, it goes on the flip side of that. Don't just watch movies that people say are bad. What'd you think of doing a podcast without any like prep work beforehand? You think it went well here?
Yeah, I mean, I think do you have the time? How long did we talk?
We'll check it out like after we quit recording here.
I think we did good enough. Like, clearly you read at least a little bit. You found the date it came out, so we at least have that level.
Doing some live research here on my phone. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this one, guys. Let us know in the comments, did we get it right? What are some topics you'd like to see for future episodes? Make sure to leave a like on this episode and consider supporting the show by checking out our Patreon page. For myself, for Jason, we will catch you guys next week on the Over Under Movies podcast. See you at the movies.